What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 of BlueTruth Rangers Talk, powered by the Sports Box. I am Brian Attard, and it's about to get very interesting in the NHL, especially for your New York Rangers. Just bear with me a quick second because Facebook decided to annoy me today, and we're still working on getting some shares out there. I will figure that as we go through the show. But anyway, thank you everybody for chiming in tonight, watching tonight's show. A lot to talk about as we are getting into the expansion draft coming very soon. And there's going to be some decisions to make for sure for the Rangers. And I think they might have shown their hand a little bit when they extended, or I should say signed, Brett Howden recently. Comment coming in. Hey, Alec, not sure if it's on my end, but no sound coming through. Hello. Might be on your end. If anybody else can't hear me, please let me know. Should be coming through. Don't see why not. My mic is working. If anybody else can hear me, please let me know. Anyway, is there really no sound? That would be bizarre. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Savior. I hear you. Beautiful. Thank you for the feedback, because I don't wear headphones, so I do rely on those to tell me, obviously. Anyway, tonight we'll get started with there's a trade. Wow. Devils have acquired defenseman Ryan Graves from Colorado in exchange for forward Mikhail Maltsev and a second-round pick. Good trade for the Devils. I got to give them credit where credit is due there. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't know. Technology, right, guys? So Devils made a trade there. Pretty good trade for them. Ryan Graves is interesting. I think he was in the Rangers system, didn't really go anywhere. Not a big deal. All right. Finally, the Facebook is cooperating, so I apologize for the delay here, but Facebook's been very annoying lately. Hopefully it hasn't been annoying for you guys as well. But again, with the expansion draft list due this weekend, the Rangers have some decisions to make. They can protect 7 forwards. They can protect 3 defensemen. They can protect 1 goaltender. On the forward side of things, you know that Panarin, Kreider, and Zibanejad are locked in. They have no movement clauses, which means that they are required by the Rangers to be protected. So no surprises there. And it's obvious that obviously Strome and Hedl and Buchnevich would also be protected. You're not going to allow these 3 players to go to Seattle for absolutely nothing. Wouldn't really make sense now, would it? Notably, and I've said this on this show for a couple of weeks now, the Rangers are very well set up for this by the format of the expansion draft, because Lafreniere, Kakko, Kravtsov, due to their age and their experience in the league, are automatically protected all day. That's wonderful. No question. They're in so much of a better position than so many other teams because they have so many of their young future core players locked up and nothing to worry about. On defense, you can protect 3. Trouba has to be protected by contract. And Ryan Lindgren is obvious. They just re-signed him. Notably, look at the list of guys that the Rangers do not have to worry about protecting. Norris Trophy winner Adam Fox, Keandre Miller, Zach Jones, Nils Lundqvist, Robertson, Braden Schneider, who obviously haven't made in the league yet. But you can see the great position that they are in that they don't have to be concerned the way other teams do. So I guess the first question is, and I want to hear obviously from the audience, who will be the 7th protected forward? Brett Howden was signed to a 1-year deal recently, so he becomes exposable as a result from the veteran standpoint. Julien Gauthier, who had some trouble in and out of the lineup under David Quinn, but, did show flashes of skill. My glasses are kind of glaring a little bit. Colin Blackwell had a very good year out of nowhere. I think they probably signed him with the intention of exposing him, and then he had a pretty good season. It gives them some pause, most likely. Kevin Rooney, 4th-line center, penalty killer, had a very good season. Again, a guy who they brought in, I'm sure, to give themselves people that they could then expose later. Alternatively, there could also be a trade in which they go and acquire a forward that another team might not be able to protect that makes sense for them to protect. And these are the decisions. Alec asks, will they need to protect future team captain Jack Johnson? No, he is an unrestricted free agent, so no worries there. So, who will be the 3rd protected defenseman? Libor Hayek, who they were high enough to give away Ryan McDonough and JT Miller in a deal, and he was the centerpiece. Anthony Bitetto, local kid, scored a goal or two. I think maybe about that. Or could there be a trade? And given the advantageous position that they're in, could there be a trade whereby which they acquire a better 3rd protected defenseman than a Libor Hayek or an Anthony Bitetto? So if you have your picks in the live audience, if you're watching on the YouTube replay, obviously you can share your commentary on who I'm going to pick as we move along the show. But if you have your comments, if you have your thoughts on who the 7th protected forward would be or should be, the 3rd protected defenseman will be or should be, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to analyze that with you. I'll go ahead and reveal mine. To me, Colin Blackwell should be the 7th forward protected, which is kind of wild when you think about where we were a year ago coming into this, because I don't think anybody would have thought that to be the case. However, I think he's played well enough that it does make sense. And he plays that gritty, hard-nosed style, which is really what they want and what they're trying to get to. He is an ideal 4th liner, but no higher than that. And I want to make that clear because last year he played with Ryan Strome and Artemi Panarin at the expense, in many cases, of Capo Kakko and Vitaly Krasov. Billy Sapp, sir, how are you? Appreciate you watching tonight. Let me know who you think should be protected. Would love to hear from you. For me, I think it's Blackwell because again, there isn't really anybody else who stands out to me. So if you go back to some of the guys that could be protected, I've honestly, and it's wild because Howden's not that old, but I've just seen enough at this point. I just don't see him being that important of a piece moving forward that I would protect a guy like Brett Howden. And I was high on Brett Howden when they brought him in. So it is annoying, frankly, that he is the way that he is. But, what else is there to say? He hasn't really developed very well. He hasn't become anything at all what you thought you were getting when you made that deal. I mean, he was a big piece. He was a high second-round pick for the Lightning. So, I mean, you look at that deal and you say, did they get hosed? Well, you ended up with Nils Lundqvist, who I think is going to be the best of the bunch. And if he pans out, you don't really care. But every other piece of this has not panned out for New York. Libor Hayek was supposed to be a top four defenseman. That's probably not going to materialize at this point. Clearly, right? Namestnikov clearly was a product of his surroundings in Tampa and was jettisoned away to Ottawa for a pittance. They didn't get the second first-round pick. They only got the one. I mean, that's all that's left, really, is Lundqvist. So, from a Howden perspective, I just think we've seen enough from that standpoint. Alex says, I'd protect Gauthier, though it's close with Blackwell. I don't think Blackwell represents his shooting percentage from 2021. And I see that, Alex, because he is a bigger body, and I do think that it depends on if he can kind of materialize himself into more of a, I don't want to use the word grinder, but more of a physical player, at least use his size a little better than he currently is. Billy Sapp says, agreed, I guess, on my categorization or my pick of Blackwell. Alex says, Howden scores with the ladies, not with the pucks. Do we blame the coaches, though? Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, and that's the rub, too, is if you protect a guy like Blackwell, was he, we always say that, Strome is a product of Panarin. And I'm the first person to say, yeah, I believe that to be true. But, were the numbers that Blackwell put up a result of playing with elite talent around him? Yeah, maybe. And that's a concern. But again, I think the way that he plays helps him where the team is looking to go. Not the biggest guy in the world, but he plays that, that gritty kind of game that I think they're trying to get to. Scott Spector, I see you commenting in the True Blue New York Rangers fan group, says hard-nosed is a perfect word for Blackwell. Play with Sherman Bregman, which I think worked. So yes, I agree with you. And Namestnikov is a no to Libor, no to Howden, no to Gauthier. I mean, like I said, they're in a good spot because the majority of their core is protected. So I'm not as concerned, with that side of things. Connor, would you still do that trade again if only to shed that cap? No, absolutely. So the biggest thing to me was that they didn't have to sign Ryan McDonagh. Because, yes, I understand he's won 2 Stanley Cups. I'm not disputing that. And I'm not disputing that he played a major role in them winning the 2 Stanley Cups. But at the same time, I don't think it would have made sense for the Rangers to sign him. So it's neither here nor there. Miller, I think, would never have materialized the way he has if he were here. And he really didn't, to those points, he really didn't in Tampa either. It wasn't until he was given that more of a, central-ish role in Vancouver that you saw him materialize the way, we thought he could do, or we thought he could be, but it didn't really happen until he was shipped around twice. So, yeah, I mean, where they were, selling off was the right thing to do. I have no issue with that. Alex says, if Gallant can get him to use his speed on the forecheck and maybe throw Kreider on the other wing, could it be an effective third line? But see, that's the thing, is there's a glut of wingers. If Gauthier is playing on the third line, that means either Buchnevich, Kakko, or Kravtsov is not in the top 3. And I think that's a larger issue. I think you need to play your talented players in the right positions. And, with what Gallant said, where he doesn't think young players should be on the fourth line because he doesn't think they're going to necessarily grow from there, then yeah. That's, I think, what makes Gauthier expendable. And it's not, I actually think he can be a good player given the opportunity, which I don't think he's really had here. but they got to get rid of someone. And if they are looking to move more towards, again, that sandpaper-ish type of player, Blackwell, I think, fits that mold more than Gauthier does. I think Gauthier can be good. Was former first-round pick, so talent's there. I just don't think. I think for them and where they are, I think they'd rather use a guy like a Blackwell over a Gauthier. Gauthier seems like he might be stuck in Hartford if he sticks around. Tom Scavetta from our friends over at Review and Preview. What's up, Brian? Love the direction we're headed in. Absolutely. It's due north, no matter any which way you slice it. And we're going to talk about some options which might expedite things at the center ice position, or maybe. But yes, it's definitely exciting times. And again, I think that there's going to be some trades going on the next couple of days as these teams kind of figure out who they're going to protect, who's going to be available, who they don't want to lose for nothing. And that's where I think the Rangers might be able to acquire like a seventh forward on the cheap, or even a defenseman who we're going to talk about. And as again, we mentioned, it's Trouba and Lindgren are the 1 and the 2. So my third pick on defense is Libor Hayek, and that's not necessarily a player that I'm excited about. It's just by default because there's nobody else. I mean, you're not going to protect Anthony Bitetto. You're just not. But, and I want to hear from you guys on this, if they could go out and get a guy like Vince Dunn from St. Louis. Now, St. Louis is in a position where they're not going to be able to protect Vince Dunn. If you look at, and our friends over at Cap Friendly, which is one of my absolute favorite websites, you can do the interactive Seattle expansion draft simulator. And if I go to St. Louis, you would think, guys, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, but see, St. Louis is most likely to protect Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, and Colton Parayko. So if that's the case, unless they go 8 total players, which they're not going to do, then they can't protect a guy like Vince Dunn. 24, plays both sides, RFA, so he needs a new deal anyway. And doesn't it seem like a Zach Jones for Vince Dunn deal like makes some sense? Because they can then, Zach Jones would be exempt for St. Louis. I like Vince Dunn quite a bit. I think Zach Jones, while I like Zach Jones too, I think his skill set is a bit replicated on this blue line. So I feel if you can go get a guy like a Vince Dunn from St. Louis for something, I will figure out, discuss trade comp, second round pick, whatever. I think it makes a lot of sense. And then you can protect him instead of Libor Hayek. That makes sense to me. Will they do it? Probably not. But I do think there's going to be some action around the league in the coming days, getting in prep for the freeze and the list of players that Seattle is going to get to choose from. Goaltending is actually the easiest because you only really got one guy. Shesterkin is exempt. Georgiev will be protected, and Keith Kincaid will be exposed. They signed Keith Kincaid for this exact reason. They signed him to be able to have a goalie to expose to the Seattle Kraken in the expansion draft. Shesterkin, again, exempt, no question there. And, Georgiev's name has come up in some trade rumors, which we're going to talk about. Kind of says Runanen over Jones and trading for Dunn. That would be fine too. I'm not, when I say Zach Jones, what I mean by that is fill in the blank with a exempt defenseman, which St. Louis could then just not worry about. That they could protect their 3 guys and be fine. If I were them, I would not want to lose Vince Dunn for nothing. So I think it makes sense for them, even if they get a below market deal, below market's still better than nothing. And obviously, if you look at who they would have exposed, you'd probably have to think that Vince Dunn will be a primary candidate to be selected by Seattle. So, you can take a look. Again, Cap Friendly is fantastic. You can do every team. For me, I think it would make a lot of sense for them to move Vince Dunn, and he'd be a great fit, I think, for the Rangers. So I'm fine there. Again, if you'd rather move Tarmo, that's perfectly fine. I'm okay with that too, because he's also exempt. So either way, the Blues get what they need, which is a player they do not have to protect because he's already protected and exempt by the rules. We mentioned Georgiev. Frank Saravalli, formerly of TSN or some outfit in Canada doing the daily faceoff now, says that the Rangers are looking for a first-round pick if they trade Georgiev, who's got one more year on his deal at $2.45 million. I don't think the most devout Georgiev fans would think that he'd be worth a first-round pick. I mean, now that would be stellar. Stellar for sure. But what team out there is going to give you a first-round pick for Georgiev? Now, do you say you're looking for a 1 so that you can negotiate into a 2? Maybe. Alex's first-round pick for Georgiev in what sport? Yeah, I mean, they're definitely aiming high, to say the very least. And I don't think they're going to get there. But, hey, worst-case scenario, no one gives you what you want. I am not at all opposed to trading Georgiev this year. I think this needs to be Shesterkin's team moving forward, and I think you make that commitment to the player. And he's probably going to get a bridge deal, is my guess. I heard some rumors. People seem to think that Buchnevich can be had for under $5 million. We're going to talk about Buchnevich at length in this show. I wouldn't be, like I said, I'm not at all opposed to trading Georgiev at all. I mean, the pipeline the Rangers have in goal is very strong. This is a backup goaltender. You can go get somebody else to play backup. Shesterkin is going to play most of your games anyway. You know, you can say Shesterkin hasn't really been the picture of health. Again, car accident. I mean, don't blame him for that. But he has missed time, so maybe that's somewhat of a concern. But I think that no matter what, by the end of next season, Georgiev's gone. So if you're going to do something with Georgiev, do it while you can extract the most value. And I think that might be this offseason. So I would be curious to see what the Rangers do there. You know, could they work any kind of a trade that gets them something that they can parlay into something else that helps them augment their center position? That would be fantastic if they could do so. Time will tell. But there are, again, going to be, I think, a flurry of deals in the coming days around the league. And you just saw it tonight with New Jersey and Colorado making a deal for Ryan Graves, where teams are going to realize, if they haven't already, which you have to assume that they have with their professional hockey teams, that we're not going to be able to keep these guys. We probably should trade them somewhere where they can be protected, and that team will give us something for them without us risking losing them for absolutely nothing. And I don't think, if you recall how good Vegas had it, where there were all sorts of side deals. There were all sorts of, you know, we'll trade this guy to you. A little better. We'll trade this guy to you if you don't take this guy. I think, you know, Vegas was helped by there and the way that was set up. So I think that it's not going to be as fruitful for Seattle as it was for Vegas. Alex says, wait to see where D'Angelo ends up and trade Georgiev there. Oh, boy. I'll take a second-round pick for Georgiev. That's what we got for Talbot. No, I would as well. But I'm curious to see if he might be part of a larger deal to do something bigger. I'd be very curious about that. The dilemma is real. The Rangers are at a crossroads with a player like Pavel Buchnevich, and they need to make a decision if this is a player that they intend to sign or they intend to trade. He is a restricted free agent. He is going to want to get paid, and he's coming off, frankly, a career year. He's only 26. Last year, 48 points in 54 games. Top-line chemistry, top-line winger chemistry with Mika Zibanejad. So it is not the easy, and there he is in his last game of the year, getting crushing Anthony Mantha in the face. It would not be easy to move on from the player. And I've said this for a couple shows now. I really think the fan base thinks that Buchnevich is older than he is because he has been around as long as he has. You remember the years that Vigneault was here and Buchnevich was languishing on the fourth line and getting benched and this, that, and a third. And boy, are we far away from that. But the last 3 seasons, 21 goals in 64 games, 16 goals in 68 games, and 20 goals last year in 54. He has become a two-way top-line winger, and those do not grow on trees. So I understand why fans would want him to be retained. Billy said, how'd you feel about the JD firing? I think it was just shocking because you just didn't expect it. Like there was I don't know anybody who's like, oh, they're going to fire Davidson in the offseason or they're going to fire Gordon. I'm not as concerned with it. I think we might have talked about this the first couple of episodes, which obviously available on YouTube. You're more than welcome to watch them back. Obviously, I appreciate that. But if they're going to continue on this path, I think I'm okay with it. Like, it's not as if only Jeff Gorton and John Davidson could be the people that get this job done. I think Chris Drury can do just fine. To me, I think it was more that shock to the system where, like, you just didn't see this coming. And then does it mean a change in course? And I don't think that it necessarily means a change in course, at least not from everything that we've heard, at the very least. So that's the case to sign Pavel Buchnevich. But there is also a case to trade Pavel Buchnevich because these contract negotiations, which they're going to do this summer, excuse me, parched. There's going to be a cost. And the Rangers are coming upon some contracts very soon that they need to be very concerned about. And that would include, obviously, Adam Fox, who needs a deal after this season. That would include Mika Zibanejad, who needs a deal after this season. That would include Kaapo Kakko and Vitaly Kravtsov, who need deals after this season. That would include Igor Shesterkin, who needs a deal right now. Philip Hedl needs a deal right now. And you have $11 million locked up in Panarin and 6.5 locked up in Kreider for the time being. Not to mention what you're paying Jacob Trouba. So, on top of that, it is not as if you are hurting at right wing. You have a 2nd overall pick and a 9th overall pick that you would hope are ready to take on larger roles in Kaapo Kakko and Vitaly Kravtsov. Now, again, I was a noted critic of the head coach who is no longer here. Why are you playing Vitaly Kravtsov on the 4th line and Kakko on the 3rd line to bump up Colin Blackwell? I understand that I just made the case to protect Colin Blackwell, but you have highly drafted talent who is 21 and 20 years old that should be ready to take the next step. And if Buchnevich is there, he's probably your top winger. So counterintuitively, does that put a ceiling on those two players because they can't get above, or maybe it creates competition? But on top of that, he also, I think, would be the primary trade chip to use in the trade for a center other than Ryan Strome, or if you include Ryan Strome. All the trades that have been discussed involving Jack Eichel have centered around Strome / and or Buchnevich. And it's because, again, he is a very good player. And he really had his coming out party last year, career year, even in a short season. It's a tough spot. And I think it's going to be determined by what his contract demands are and what he's looking for. And I think that we should be flexible here. You know, if a deal comes around that makes sense, make that deal because it makes sense. But I would give Buchnevich 5x6. I'd give him 5x5. I'd give him 6x5, depending on what he was looking to do. But the one thing that they can't do is give him a no move clause or a no trade clause. And Alec said it best in the comments here, you know, sign him, but sign without a no trade. Move if you have to. That kills flexibility. And that is 100% my take, because still a very good player, still a central player, a core player, really became much more of a core player last year. Team is very different without what he brings to the table. but you can't hamstring yourself. You already have that with Panarin, Kreider. Zibanejad, I'm sure will get one, whenever he signs, if he signs. Trouba's going to get one. He already has one. So again, you have to provide yourself the flexibility that if a deal comes along, you have to maybe be able to make it. So in his case, I'm perfectly fine giving him a contract within reason, but I can't give him a no trade clause. Will he take one without? I don't know. I guess it depends how much money you give him. Connor says, if Buchnevich is not re-signed, expect Joel Armia to be at the top of the Rangers target list, very possibly. But I think at that point, if you're moving Buchnevich, what that really means is you're pushing Kakko up to line 1, which would be great, and Krasov up to line 2, which would be great. And then you can worry about that third line. Find a, if you're looking for the energy type winger, that two-way type winger, then that opens up those openings. We've said for a couple of weeks on this show, the top 9 is basically set, in which you have your wingers. You have Lafreniere, Panarin, and Kreider, and you have Buchnevich, Kakko, and Kravtsov. So there wasn't really a lot of room for them to go out there and go get these different types of wingers. But now if you move on from Buchnevich to augment your center position, then you open up a winger position in your middle 6. That makes some sense. We'll see what they need. Stephen Daniels, newer name, I think. We appreciate you. Hey, give us a like on the page. We appreciate that. Rangers need leadership. We're going to talk about that. There's a couple of names that they've been linked to that would provide some of that. And it's interesting why they're linked to these two players. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Alec, I'd prefer before they make wholesale changes, let Gerard Gallant have a bit and see what he thinks we need, who he thinks is disposable. And that is absolutely a fair point. A lot has been made of the team, they don't play with grit. They don't do this. They don't do that. Yeah, David Quinn's team didn't do that. So before we start making these judgments on these players, let's see what they do under different leadership. Because I'm not convinced that Trouba can't bring that edge, that Lindgren, can bring that edge. Kreider plays with it on occasion. You have some guys who can do that. I think his name's escaping me right now. Why is his name escaping me right now? I can't. Morgan Barron, sorry. My Red Bull's wearing off. Morgan Barron is going to play a big role, I think. Again, a bigger player, can play a little bit of that of that edge type game. So I agree with you. I do think that you need to see what they are. But again, this is Drury's chance to put his stamp on the team, and I think he's going to do it. Pete Vaughn, another new name. Appreciate you watching the show. Do you feel like trading Kreider to keep Buchnevich? They can't trade Kreider. He has no movement clause. They gave him that when they signed him. That's their own fault. That's Jeff Gorton's fault. They also didn't know that they were going to get Alexis Lafreniere at the top of the draft when they gave Chris Kreider the 7-year deal they gave him. 6-year deal extension. No, I know he signed for 6 more years or longer. Oh, God. Is it longer than that? UFA at the end? No. Okay. Yeah. So they had given him that deal. God, 7-year deal. He's entering year 2 of that 7-year deal. It is what it is. He probably gets traded before the end of it. I think Buchnevich obviously plays a bigger role than Kreider does moving forward. I think that's based on Kreider being 30 years old and Buchnevich being 26. So if you could do it, yeah. Probably not. Boris, I will get to your question in just a moment because we are going to go into some potential linked players that the Rangers might be looking at. Mike Epstein, who I know watches every show. Thank you, brother. Do you think Gauthier has a potential to be better than Buchnevich? No. I think if he did, you would have seen it by now. I think Gauthier can be a very effective player. I don't think he can be a top-line winger. But I also think that on this team, wingers and defense are the strength. It's the center position that they're a little bit weak. So, on the back end and on the outside, you're fine. That's why maybe a guy like Gauthier, just the numbers work against him. And that's why, if he had played a grittier style, maybe they keep him over a Blackwell. I am not opposed to keeping him. Like if they expose Blackwell, I'm not going to be horribly upset about it because I think Gauthier has a higher ceiling. But you can only have so many high-octane offensive players. Like you do need to change the mix up a little bit. So for the people that say they need grit, I am not entirely disagreeing with you, but what I am saying is that you do not You don't give away elite type talent or top end type talent to go get it. Because Gauthier hasn't really proven that yet, I don't need to sit around and wait. I have wingers for the long term. So they have a plethora there. I'm sure they'll find other ones. Again, Will Cooley is in the system. They have other players. It's not as if Gauthier is irreplaceable. Not that Blackwell isn't either, but again, Blackwell does play a bit of a different game than Gauthier would. So again, just in summary on Buchnevich, I think unless there's a deal that makes a lot of sense, give him a deal. Or I should say, is there a trade that makes a lot of sense? Give him a deal, but please do not hamstring the roster by making him have a no trade clause, a no movement clause, because you can't. Because there's going to be more of those coming, and at some point you won't be able to make any changes to your team when you absolutely need to. So again, comments coming in regards to that. Steven Daniels, what about Getzlaf for third or fourth line center? I don't know that that's necessarily the way that they look. Age is something. I personally think they're more looking towards replacing Strome in the top six than they are anything else. I think in a perfect world, they'd love to move Strome to the third line for at least this season. Who knows what Hedl turns into, but Strome's going to price himself out of this market in 12 months, no matter what. This is Ryan Strome's last year on the team, no matter what. This is Georgiev's last year on the team, no matter what, because you're going to need that money for other things. You just are. And for the people out there that are Strome people, don't take it the wrong way. I still think he's a product of Panarin. So I am not willing to put big money into a guy I think is a product of Panarin, frankly. I'm just not. Would I hate Getzlaf? No, but I don't necessarily think that's the direction they go. But I think Steven, you bring that up because you're looking on the leadership side of things. You see a guy like Getzlaf who's won. He won the Stanley Cup. I think he was in Anaheim. I'm sure he has a ring somewhere. So I understand where you get that. But they have been linked to a couple of captains, and I think there's a reason for that. So the first name is Steven Stamkos. Steven Stamkos is 31 years old. That's what Mark Messier was when he was traded to the Rangers. He has 3 more seasons at $8.5 million against the cap. That is not a small number. He does have a no movement clause, which means he will dictate where he goes. 2-time Stanley Cup winner, captain. And as everybody and their mother knows, Tampa Bay is up against the salary cap. And I'm sure if they could move 8-5 out, they'd be very happy to do so. It allows them to do other things and keep other players. He did have an injury which kept him out of a big chunk of time in 2020. Came back, played 1 game in the finals, did score a big goal. He had 34 points in 38 games this year. So he also missed a little bit of time, but he was productive when he played. I go back and forth on this, and I want to hear your comments if you're watching live. What do you think about adding, again, everything's pending price, right? Of adding a Steven Stamkos to this team? Logic would dictate that given Tampa's situation, they would probably, and to do right by Stamkos, he is their captain. That's not an easy deal to do. Now, we know that. We've traded captains to Tampa twice, so they probably owe us one. But the position that they are in financially, to me, makes me think that they would be more apt to accept less in trade to get Stamkos where he wants to go, and he would move that no trade clause, a no movement clause to go to, but at the same time get that cap relief. So I think that they would be looking more towards younger, cheaper alternatives. So if you look at the Eichel deal that I had proposed a couple weeks ago that I maintain I still would do. Ryan Strome, Vitaly Kravtsov, Zach Jones, and the 15th overall pick this year's draft. If Tampa came and said Stamkos for Kravtsov and Jones, would you do it? The problem with that is your salary cap, because then you know Strome's a goner, because Stamkos goes into your top two. And then Strome's not going to be a third line center. So then you do something else with that player, but Tampa wouldn't want that money back. Tampa wants to get as much money off their cap as possible. Comments coming in very much against this. Alex making his point very clear. No Stamkos, classic Rangers chasing the name. He's broken down, fading, not a piece you can count on moving forward. Mike Epstein, Stamkos' health scares me. Almost traded for him 13 years ago. I remember that. Steven Daniels, I wouldn't add him. He's injury prone. Kind of said, would rather trade for someone more desperate, like getting Goodrow from the Flames. When Stamkos is playing, he does have talent still. I mean, he was first overall pick in the draft. I mean, for a reason. Yes, he is not the Stamkos he was, but he did, again, when he plays, he is still effective. If you slot him in behind Zibanejad, if you make him a second-line center, he has a couple of years left. I understand those who have concern about his health. But then are you also out on Jack Eichel? In theory, a deal for Stamkos should cost you a lot less than a deal for Eichel. You know, Hedl and Jones might get it done to get Stamkos. It really should cost you less. Now, the price is coming down from what you hear. It's all spec. Price is coming down on Eichel because the Sabres realize they're not going to bend some team over a barrel, and they're not really in a very strong negotiating position, frankly. But when they say that teams that win the Stanley Cup don't win the Stanley Cup without having guys on the team that have won the Stanley Cup before, obviously Stamkos fits that bill. He's just coming off of 2 in a row. Everything is price dependent. Now, the difference here is Tampa will not retain money here. They won't. So unless you get crafty and go through another team, which then you're going to pay for, obviously, you'd be paying the full 8.5 for 3 years of Steven Stamkos. So if Stamkos was a free agent, would you give him 3 years at 25.5? Maybe. Basically Jake Voracek's deal. He would provide that leadership that some people think that they are lacking. Again, the man's worn the sea now for 2 Stanley Cup winning teams. He's been around. 31 is old. It's not 35, but it's not 28. So I understand that argument too. I think they could do a lot worse, but everything is dependent on price. If you're telling me that you're going to sell off a couple very important pieces and then pay the guy 8.5, then I'm probably out on that. But I would understand, and I think Diane X's point here is, again, he's Stamkos plays center, needs center desperately, but cup experience is good. We do need that. And for a team that intends to contend, again, they always say you have to have a guy who's won the cup to win the cup. Now, whatever, I don't know how much that's hyperbole or not, but for a younger team to have somebody there who's been through the battles and can really, the reason that guys like Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow are going to hit bank this offseason is because they were just on a couple cup winning teams and they played very effective roles in the bottom 6. I'd love Blake Coleman on this team. Now that would be somebody who I'd love to add. I'm not against Stamkos pending the price. Stamkos plays center. So he would slot in right behind Zibanejad. He can play wing too, but he slots in right behind Zibanejad. And he gives you that leadership that you don't have. So for all the people who are anti-Eichel because, he's never won Jack, pardon the pun, he's never won anything, he wanted to leave his team, la-da-ya-da-da. Those arguments fall away from a guy like Stamkos, who's been a warrior. So I don't know. For the people that are anti-both, I think you might be playing both sides of your mouth there. I don't know. You can't hate everyone. You're going to find problems with everyone, but you can't be anti doing anything because I think we all know they're going to do something. I don't think that you're going to have the same roster that finished the season, start the next one. I think we can all be in agreement with that. Would the Rangers doctors check Eichel before? Yes. No, 100%. So what I've read is that Sabres doctors are or whatever, the team is giving the medicals to legit trade offers. Not to everyone, but if you have a legit offer on the table, then they will give you the medicals. Rather Eichel than Stamkos, but can Mika be kept adding Eichel? Well, frankly, there's a $1.5 million difference between Stamkos and Eichel. I don't know that that's a material difference. I don't know. The Zibanejad contract is going to hang over this team until it gets done. It just is. And for a team with as much up-and-coming talent as they have, the flat cap hurts them. The flat cap hurts them when these guys want deals. Listen, Kirill Kaprizov out of Minnesota, rating Calder winner, turned down 8 years times $9 million. What does that tell you about what these kids are going to be wanting in their second deals? And if they're going to get them. So, again, Adam Fox winning the Norris Trophy, yeah, that's great. Wonderful. Love it for him. It ain't good for the Rangers because that's a hell of a negotiating point that your agent can bring up and say, hi, my client who happens to love your team and wants to be here. By the way, he just won the Norris Trophy, so we're going to need $9 million a year. And they're going to give it to him, and who cares? It's Adam Fox. He's that good, but then it precludes you from doing other things. And that's where the Kreider deal and at this point, the Trouba deal come back to bite you. The Panarin deal's fine. I have no issue with it. He's worth 11.6 every day. But Trouba, the first 2 years of his deal, I think we can all agree, as much as I don't dislike the player, I like the player. He has not been $8 million a year player. So what my hope is for him is that he, in his third year, is not stuck carrying along another young defenseman or a kid defenseman. He can actually play his game. Because I think, Keandre Mills going into his second year, there's no more growing pains. So we need to see an $8 million a year Jacob Trouba this year. We need to see that. If they intend to do anything, he needs to be an $8 million a year player. I think we can all agree about that. And he might be wearing the C by the time the puck drops anyway. So we'll see where that goes. Xavier Stamkos usually leads from the IR. Yeah. Steven says we need centers that can win faceoffs, though puck control is key. Absolutely, and Stamkos will do that. Another name that they've been linked to, Gabriel Landeskog from the Colorado Avalanche. Again, another captain. So now, in his case, he is a UFA, so he only costs you money. And as you can see, he's not afraid to mix it up. There's a fight with Braden Shen. He is 28 years old, 3 years younger than Steven Stamkos, 52 points in 54 games in 2021 on a very, 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 very good Colorado team who thinks they can win the Stanley Cup, and they probably can. They are apparently far apart in contract negotiations. Now, here is my big thing here, right? I like Gabriel Landeskog, and if you look far enough, you'll see him playing on the Kitchener Rangers in a Rangers jersey, so you can kind of see what it looks like. Where's number 92? But he's been a winger. Like, he's a winger. He can play center, and he's decent in the draw, but he's a winger. Like, do we really want to take a natural winger and play him at center, even though he can play center? And do you want to commit a lot of money for a lot of years to do that? I mean, he is a phenomenal hockey player. Love Gabe Landeskog. But if it doesn't work out at center, what do you do? If he can only play, if he ends up like not working out at that position, what do you do? You have wingers you cannot get rid of because you've given them contracts that say you can't get rid of them. So, to me, I think that is a very, very big concern. Colorado right now has to worry about a deal for him, has to worry about a deal for Cale Makar, which is going to set the market, obviously, for Adam Fox. But Landeskog does a lot of things that the Rangers don't have. 20 goals, 32 assists in 54 games last year, 21, 23 in 54 games a year before. He missed some time due to injury. 34 goals the last full season in 73 games. I mean, he brings it. But not being a natural center for a team that needs centers, that's a risk. It's a risk because it's not as if you can say, all right, well, the center thing didn't work out. We'll put him on the wing. Where? I think there's going to be a bidding war. Those don't tend to work out well for the team who signs a player. You know, unrestricted free agency doesn't always work for a lot of teams. It didn't work for us for many years in the 90s. Different league, different world. He is a hell of a hockey player, but he's also 28. So the same thing that we talk about, you know, are you ready to give Zibanejad 7-8 years at his age? You're having that same discussion about a guy like Landeskog in that, you know, are you paying for what he's been more than what he's going to be? Would definitely help the team. But again, if I'm at the spot where I'm talking about that 9.5 million, like if I like 8.5 and 10 is just, it's not that different to me. I don't know if it is to you. In these terms, $1 million, like you figure it out. It's a rounding error. Pardon the pun. So if it's Eichel or Landeskog at $10 million, I'd rather do Eichel. I'd rather give up assets and get Eichel because I don't think that he's a natural center. But I understand why those want Landeskog because he plays a different game. A little more rugged. We don't have that. And that's what everybody says that they need. So it's going to be a lot of money wherever he goes. The Rangers have a bit of a mirage with cap space for everything that I mentioned before. Again, the Adam Foxes of the world who need deals, and Igor Shesterkins, and Kakko's going to need money. And you can go down the list. And Savior, again, if you get rid of Kreider, yeah, but you can't because you gave him a goddamn no trade clause, consistently making it harder on yourself. Pete Vaughn, Colorado offered $5.5 million for Landeskog. If you get him for $7 million, 5 years, I say do it. If I'm him, I don't take that. And if $5.5 million was, and I haven't seen that, I'm curious to know where you saw that. If that's legit, that's a slap in the face, an absolute slap in the face. Tolyan Bear on buyout Panarin. I mean, I think you're being facetious, my friend. You clearly can't possibly mean that. Love our time Panarin. So I don't know. I'll be curious to see where he ends up. I don't think it's here. I'll be curious to see where he ends up. And bonus, Vladimir Tarasenko. Okay. I don't have a graphic for him. I thought I made one. Did I make one? I didn't make one. All right. My bad. Anyway. Yes, everyone remembers the draft where the Rangers took Dylan McIlrath. Was it 2010? I think it was 2010. Dylan McIlrath over Tarasenko. Yes, I regret it too. I regret it a lot. Makes me sad. He's got 2 more years at $7.5 million. I told you, yes, we did mention that Ryan Graves was traded to the Devils and clearly a protective move by Colorado for the expansion draft. They don't want to lose him for nothing, which makes sense. And that's why the Rangers should be in on a guy like Vince Dunn because they have an open spot. The Rangers should be in on these kind of deals to go get a guy that won't be able to be protected. Tarasenko has 2 more years at $7.5 million. Now, he's only played 34 total games in the last 2 seasons due to multiple shoulder surgeries. And part of the reason that it seems he wants out of St. Louis is that he thinks that they didn't really take care of those surgeries as well as they possibly could have. However, 68 points in 76 games his last full year in 2019-20. Or was it 18-19? Whatever. Last full season. No trade clause. Alex says no for Tarasenko, bum shoulder, near the wing like we need another no trade contract. Who does he displace? Wrong guy for this team. Now, you and I are like this right now because I completely agree. He wants to come here because he's buddy with Panarin. Cool. Yes, I wish we drafted him. I was very upset when we didn't, but that's gone now. And Now, I'll give you this. If you can move Kreider for him, sure. That helps you because then the contract's up sooner, but Kreider's not going to go. Kreider signed the no trade clause. If you get Kreider, if you can get these two guys to waive it for each other, all in. I'm fine with it. I would make that move for a couple of reasons because, again, yes, he's not cheap, but it's 2 more years versus what Kreider's got, and that helps tremendously. So if it's Tarasenko for Kreider, sure. If it's not, no. And I love the player. I've always loved the player. Always have. But it doesn't fit. Again, wingers you have, centers you don't. You have to replace a winger. If you're replacing Chris Kreider, cool. I'm perfectly fine with that all day. But that's not what's going to happen. So barring that, I do not think that the Rangers are a fit for Vladimir Tarasenko. And I don't think anybody else does, from what I can tell here either. Mike Epstein, no trade on movement clause, yes. So he will decide. Both of these players will decide where they go if they go, which is fine. But that's what you negotiated. So, for all the good that we give Jeff Gorton credit for, which again, as I've said, the 4 best things that Jeff Gorton did, Artemi Panarin, Adam Fox, Alexis Lafreniere, and Capo Caco, my son could have done. So, that's why I wasn't like, oh my God, we can't move on without these people because, for all the good you did, there was also, you didn't really get a whole lot back from McDonough and JT Miller. You made a couple deals that did not work out for you. So nobody's perfect. Stephen Daniels, Ryan Suter on D. I was going to bring that topic up. So we're going to close the show today with a little bit of around the NHL with some big buyouts. Parise and Suter out of Minnesota, Keith Yandle, the former Ranger, have all been bought out. Parise and Suter, if you remember, signed 13-year, $98 million deals in 2012. Both of them had 4 years left at over $7.5 million. Keith Yandle had 2 years left, 6.35 in his buyout. Boris asks, do you think we go for Malkin? Probably not. Not at his age. Not at his age. He's not what he was. And I think anybody who trades for him, Pittsburgh's going to get a lot of. Free agent contract in a year? We can talk about that, depending on the money, especially if Strome is gone. But again, you're hitching your wagons to older players. I mean, he's 34 now too. I think I don't think he's a young 34. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, he's actually going to turn 35 in 2 weeks. So totally embarrassing, insane deals. Yeah, brother, to say the very least. By the way, their general manager, the guy who signed both those deals, is now in Philadelphia. Yandle had 2 years left at 6.35. If you go look at the buyout figures on Parise and Suter, years, I think 3 and 4, they pay them exactly what they would have paid them to play, just not to play. It opens up $10 million this year, which makes me think that the Wild are a suitor for Eichel. We'll see where that goes. But they're opening up that money to do something. Part of it might be protecting in the expansion draft, but they're open. They are looking to do something. And I'd be curious if Parise and Suter were asked to just waive those new moves for the expansion draft. There's no way in hell Seattle would have taken them anyway. So there's more to it than that. They really wanted to get that cap space. Now, some comments coming in. Again, Pete Vaughn, if you get Suter for $1.5 million, do it. Parise, no, wait. Now, Parise end up on the island and he stinks anyway. He's done. But Ryan Suter on their third pair, they could do a lot worse than that, depending on the money. I'm kind of curious to see if Keith Yandle would like to reprise his role in New York. Has to change his number because of Mika's advantage ad, but I'd be curious to see if Keith Yandle would like to come back on a cheap deal. Veteran presence on the D line again. So was Suter. So I mean, for the same reason, it's not like you're not getting the Yandle that you traded for moons ago. But I'd be curious to see if he has any interest in coming back again, because a lot of these guys that get bought out will come on for cheap. So That would be interesting. Although, again, Tolyan has already said no. No to Yandle, please. Okay. Can't please everybody. Again, it's not the worst idea I've ever had. So I think it'd be interesting, but we have plenty of figure skaters. Yes, it is. And I hear that because, again, he is predominantly an offensive presence. You don't really get that rough and tumble type of, the defensive presence there. So, yeah, I can understand that. So someone made a comment about Tom Wilson, bunch of losers. Anyway. So that ends tonight's show. What I would like to invite everybody who's watching the show. So the Sports Box, the network that powers BlueTruth, which I'm also a prime member of, will be doing the full Seattle Kraken mock expansion draft this Tuesday night, July the 20th at 8:30 p.m. You can find that at Sportsbox Show on Facebook, at Sportsbox Show on Twitter. So myself and a couple of the guys from the Sportsbox team will be going through and basically mocking out from the list, which will be available at that point, of who we think Seattle's going to take. And again, right now, I think it's Kevin Rooney from the Rangers. We'll see what happens, but I think it's Kevin Rooney. Those who are interested, again, check that page out. We will be live Tuesday night doing the full mock for the Seattle Kraken. You can come make fun of all the Flyers fans who are watching. I do all the time. It is definitely a lot of fun for me. Mike Epstein, I remember Yano productive, just not good at his position. You know what, though, Mike? I would say to you that I think a lot of Yandle's issues in New York were a direct result of the head coach at the time, who had no goddamn clue how to use him. No clue how to use him. And that's a problem for Vigneault. Mark Stahl, Nick Holden. Alec, anyone seen an Islander jersey in public lately? Me neither. All right, only for you, Alec, because I know that you'll enjoy it. We love watching the Islanders be sad. So just for you, my friend, I will play the Islander video of them being sad and losing, which again is always fun when we see them upset. And there's the eventual Stanley Cup champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and their fans enjoying themselves. Don't you love? You just love seeing the sadness. I know I do. It actually nourishes me. And then, of course, their fans at Borelli's, which I'm sure Borelli's has a much shorter wait list these days to get in, especially Frankie himself. Piece of shit. Anyway, it's always fun to make fun of the Islanders. We'll do that for the rest of our natural lives, I'm sure. So anyway, but thank you all for checking out episode 6 of BlueTruth. Sorry we had a little bit of technical difficulty at the beginning there. Facebook is not always supportive of live content creators. So sometimes the software doesn't work together and you have to keep doing it until it does. It's a bunch of nonsense. But anyway, it is what it is. For those of you who have some interest, we'll see you Tuesday night for the mock expansion draft. We'll probably be back. I got to see what the NHL dates are as far as when we'll be back on this show. I think the expansion draft looks like it is the 21st, and the 21st is a Wednesday. So we probably will not do BlueTruth next week because we'll probably be doing live NHL draft coverage on the Sports Box Friday night. So we probably won't do anything next week, barring a major deal. I would do like an emergency episode to talk about the trade. We'll probably do something in between now. I don't even know. I guess just keep your eye out on the page. I'll kind of see when we can squeeze some stuff in, because it's going to look, like I said, there's going to be a lot going on in the NHL the next couple of days, the next couple of weeks. Everything is so condensed. A lot of shit's going down. But between the expansion draft on the 21st, the actual draft on the 23rd, I don't think we're going to make a pick if there's going to be traded. Free agency is on the 28th. So a lot going on starting like right now. So pretty much if you have Twitter, you're going to be updating all the time. But anything the Rangers do, we'll be discussing it here. So follow the page, follow us, Facebook, Twitter, all your socials, Sportsbox, BlueTruth, love it. Thank you guys so much for your interaction. We obviously appreciate talking Rangers with you guys. Obviously the topic that binds us all together. It's going to get pretty exciting here. So obviously, keep on keeping on, and we will see you soon. And let's go Rangers.